Vin Diesel laughs at Jimmy Kimmel after being kicked off his show. Section 1. What happens when Hollywood's biggest action star walks into what he thinks is a friendly late-night interview, only to discover the host has been plotting against him for months? What you're about to witness is one of the most shocking confrontations in late-night television history, where Vin Diesel not only exposes Jimmy Kimmel's true colors, but does it with a laugh that will send chills down your spine. Make sure you subscribe and drop a comment below, because this story gets more intense with every word. The green room backstage at Jimmy Kimmel Live was unusually quiet that Tuesday evening. Vin Diesel sat in the leather chair, his massive frame relaxed as he scrolled through his phone, completely unaware of what was waiting for him on that stage. His publicist, Sarah, paced nervously by the door. "Vin, you sure you want to do this interview tonight?" Sarah asked, her voice carrying a hint of concern that she'd been trying to suppress all week. "Why wouldn't I?" Vin looked up from his phone, his deep voice carrying that familiar confidence. "Jimmy and I go way back. We've done this dance before." "That's exactly what I'm worried about," Sarah muttered under her breath. A production assistant knocked and entered. "Mr. Diesel, you're up in 5 minutes." Vin stood straightening his black shirt and adjusting his silver chain. Time to make some magic happen. As he walked toward the stage entrance, Sarah grabbed his arm. Then, "Listen to me. Something feels different about tonight. Jimmy's been asking weird questions during the pre-in calls. Questions about your personal life, your family, things that have nothing to do with promoting the new film." Vin paused, studying her face. "What kind of questions?" "Questions about the rumors, Vin. The ones we've been trying to keep quiet." Before Vin could respond, the same production assistant returned. "Mr. Diesel, we really need you now." The iconic theme music began playing as Vin walked onto the stage. The audience erupted in applause, their energy infectious as always. Jimmy Kimmel stood behind his desk, wearing that signature smile that had made him millions. But tonight, something was different in his eyes, something colder. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the one and only Vin Diesel." Jimmy's voice boomed through the studio. Vin waved to the crowd, that genuine warmth radiating from him as he made his way to the guest chair. He shook Jimmy's hand, the grip lasting just a moment longer than usual, both men sizing each other up. "Vin Diesel, thank you for being here," Jimmy said as they both sat down. "You look fantastic as always." "Thanks for having me, Jimmy. Always a pleasure." The audience settled down and Jimmy leaned back in his chair, that smile never leaving his face. "So Vin, let's talk about your new movie, Fast and Furious 15. Is that right?" Vin laughed, his deep chuckle filling the studio. "Close, Jimmy. It's actually Fast X Part 2. But who's counting at this point?" "Right, right. You know, I have to ask because I think everyone's wondering this. How do you keep coming up with new ways to defy the laws of physics in these movies?" "Well, Jimmy, it's all about family," Vin replied, settling into his standard talking points. "When you have that bond, that connection with your team, both on screen and off, you can accomplish anything." Jimmy nodded, but his smile seemed to tighten slightly. "Family? Yes, you talk about family a lot. In fact, some might say you talk about it obsessively." There was something in Jimmy's tone that made Vin's eyes narrow slightly. "I wouldn't say obsessively, I'd say authentically." "Authentically," Jimmy repeated, drawing out the word. "That's interesting because I've been hearing some things about your definition of authentic family values." The studio fell silent. Even the camera operators seemed to sense the shift in energy. Vin's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "What exactly are you trying to say, Jimmy?" Jimmy leaned forward, his elbows on the desk. "Well, I'm just curious about the disconnect between the family man image you project and some of the stories that have been floating around Hollywood." "Stories," Vin said flatly. "Oh, come on, Vin. We're all adults here. The stories about your behavior on set, the way you treat people who work for you, the demands, the tantrums, the threats." Vin remained perfectly still, but his voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. "Jimmy, I think you might want to be very careful about where you're trying to take this conversation." But Jimmy was clearly past the point of being careful. "Why should I be careful? This is my show, Vin. my stage, and I think my audience deserves to know who they're really cheering for. The audience shifted uncomfortably in their seats. This wasn't the lighthearted banter they'd come to expect from late-night television. Your audience, Vin said slowly, came here to be entertained, not to watch you try to ambush someone who considered you a friend. Friend? Jimmy laughed, but there was no humor in it. Is that what we are, Vin? Because friends don't usually threaten to destroy other friends' careers over a few jokes? What are you talking about? Jimmy reached under his desk and pulled out a manila folder. Oh, I think you know exactly what I'm talking about. Should I refresh your memory? The folder landed on the desk with a soft thud that somehow echoed through the silent studio. Vin's eyes moved from Jimmy's face to the folder and back again, his expression unreadable. Go ahead, Jimmy, Vin said, his voice steady as stone. Open it. Jimmy's fingers hesitated for just a moment before flipping open the manila cover. This is a compilation of complaints filed against you by crew members over the past 3 years. Complaints that mysteriously disappeared from official records. Mysteriously, Vin repeated. Or maybe they disappeared because they were complete fabrications. Were they? Jimmy pulled out a sheet of paper. Because according to this report from the set of Fast N, you allegedly threw a chair at a camera operator because he accidentally filmed your bald spot during a close-up. Vin's laugh was low and rumbling. A chair? Jimmy? Do you see the size of me? If I threw a chair at someone, do you really think they'd be filing a complaint? They'd be filing for disability. A few audience members chuckled nervously, but Jimmy pressed on. What about the incident where you supposedly locked a screenwriter in a trailer for 6 hours because he wouldn't change a line of dialogue? Now that Vin said, leaning back in his chair, that one's actually true. The admission caught Jimmy off guard. His eyebrows shot up. So you admit it? I admit that I care about the integrity of my characters. Yes, and when some studio hack tries to put words in Dom Toretto's mouth that betray everything the character stands for, then yes, I have a problem with that. So, you locked him in a trailer? I had a conversation with him, a long conversation in a private space where we wouldn't be interrupted. Jimmy shuffled through more papers, his confidence growing as he thought he was gaining ground. What about the allegations that you've been using your influence to get other actors blacklisted from franchises? Vin's demeanor shifted slightly, his jaw setting harder. Now you're getting into dangerous territory, Jimmy. Dangerous for who? For you. The two men stared at each other across the desk, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Jimmy's hand trembled slightly as he turned another page. According to my sources, you had Tyrese Gibson removed from consideration for 3 major action films because he spoke out against your control over the Fast and Furious franchise. Vin stood up slowly, his imposing figure casting a shadow over Jimmy's desk. The audience collectively held their breath as 6 feet of pure muscle rose to full height. Your sources, Vin said, his voice dropping to that dangerous whisper again. Who exactly are your sources, Jimmy? That's not important. It's very important, Vin said, taking a step closer to the desk, because whoever fed you this information has an agenda. And I'm starting to think you're not smart enough to see what it is. Jimmy's confidence wavered for the first time. I'm smart enough to know when someone's trying to intimidate me on my own show. Intimidate? Vin laughed again. But this time it was different. Darker, more menacing. Jimmy, if I wanted to intimidate you, you'd know it. What I'm doing right now is trying to educate you. Educate me about what? About the fact that you're being played like a fiddle by people who want to see me destroyed, and you're too arrogant to realize it. Jimmy stood up now, too, trying to match Vin's presence, but falling short by several inches and about 100 pounds of muscle. Nobody's playing me, Vin. I did my own research. Your own research? Vin picked up the folder and flipped through it casually, like he was reading a restaurant menu. These documents, Jimmy, where did you get them? That's confidential. Confidential? Vin nodded slowly. Let me guess. Someone reached out to your producers about 6 weeks ago. Someone with inside knowledge of the industry. Someone who claimed to have information that would make for great television. Jimmy's face went pale. How did I know? Vin tossed the folder back. Onto the desk with more force this time. Papers scattered across the surface because the same person tried to shop this story to 3 other talk shows before you. The difference is they were smart enough to fact-check it. The studio was dead silent now. Even the cameramen had stopped adjusting their equipment, frozen in place like they were watching a car accident happened in slow motion. You want to know what really happened with that screenwriter, Jimmy? He wasn't locked in a trailer. He was in my motorhome, and we worked together for 6 hours straight to create dialogue that honored the character and the story. When we were done, he thanked me and said it was the most collaborative experience he'd ever had with a lead actor. Jimmy's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for water. And Tyrese wasn't blacklisted by me. Tyrese was removed from those projects because he violated his contracts by talking publicly about internal creative decisions. But I'm the one who fought to keep him in the Fast family when the studio wanted him gone permanently. Vin leaned forward, placing both hands flat on Jimmy's desk. The wood creaked under the pressure. So, let me ask you again, Jimmy. Who gave you this folder? I can't. You can't what? Reveal your source, or you can't admit that you've been manipulated into doing someone else's dirty work. Jimmy fumbled with the scattered papers, his hands visibly shaking now. Even if some of these details are wrong, that doesn't mean what? That you haven't just committed career suicide on live television? The weight of Vin's words seemed to hit Jimmy all at once. His face went from pale to ashen, the color draining completely. You know what the really sad part is, Jimmy? Vin straightened up, his voice taking on an almost pitying tone. I actually liked you. I thought you were one of the good ones in this business. Someone who understood that entertainment should bring people together, not tear them apart. Vin, maybe we should, what? Cut to commercial. Pretend this didn't happen. Edit it out in post-production. Vin shook his head slowly. No, Jimmy. You wanted to play this game on live television, so we're going to finish it on live television. Jimmy glanced desperately toward his producers in the wings, but they seemed frozen, unsure of how to handle what was unfolding. Here's what's going to happen next, Jimmy, Vin continued, his voice calm but commanding. You're going to tell your audience exactly who gave you this folder. You're going to explain how you were manipulated into ambushing a guest on your own show, and then you're going to apologize. I'm not apologizing for doing journalism. Journalism? Vin's laugh filled the studio, rich and deep and absolutely terrifying. Jimmy, this isn't journalism. This is a hit job, and you were dumb enough to be the trigger man. The audience was completely silent now, some people looking uncomfortable, others leaning forward in fascination at the train wreck happening before their eyes. You want to know who really controls Hollywood, Jimmy? It's not actors like me. It's the people who convinced you that destroying someone's reputation on national television would be good for your ratings. Jimmy's face twisted with a mixture of desperation and defiance. You think you can just waltz in here and threaten me? This is my show, Vin. My network. You're just a guest. A guest? Vin repeated slowly, that dangerous smile spreading across his face. You know what, Jimmy? You're absolutely right. I am just a guest, which means I can leave whenever I want. Good. Then leave. Vin didn't move. Instead, he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his phone. Before I do that, though, I think your audience deserves to know the truth about who's really pulling the strings here. Jimmy's eyes widened. What are you doing? I'm calling someone who's very interested in this conversation. Vin held up the phone so the audience could see he was dialing. Someone who's been waiting for you to make exactly this mistake. You can't make phone calls during a live taping. Watch me. The phone connected and Vin put it on speaker. Marcus, you there? A voice came through crystal clear, filling the studio. Vin, I'm watching. This is even better than we expected. Jimmy's face went white. Who is that? Jimmy Kimmel. Meet Marcus Chen, head of legal at Universal Studios. Marcus, say hello to the man who just tried to destroy one of your biggest assets on live television. Hello, Jimmy. Marcus's voice was ice cold. We need to talk. Jimmy looked around frantically. I don't understand what's happening here. What's happening? Vin said, sitting back down casually. Is that you just fell into a trap that's been 6 months in the making? A trap? Vin nodded to someone off camera, and suddenly the studio's main screen lit up with documents. You see, Jimmy, when someone starts shopping fake stories about one of Hollywood's biggest stars, word gets around. And when that someone specifically targets talk, shows known for ambush interviews, well, that gets the lawyers interested. The documents on screen showed email exchanges, payment records, and contracts. Jimmy squinted at them, his confusion evident. Those emails, Jimmy, show exactly who's been feeding you information, and more importantly, why Marcus's voice came through the phone again. Jimmy, the person who gave you that folder is Rebecca Martinez, former development executive at Paramount. She was fired 6 months ago for embezzling funds from 3 different film budgets. Jimmy's legs seemed to give out, and he slumped back into his chair. That's impossible, is it? Vinny pulled out another phone. This one showing a recording app. Because I've been recording this entire conversation, and I have a feeling Rebecca's going to be very interested in how willing you were to destroy someone's career based on her fabricated evidence. You're recording this, Jimmy? This is Lev Television. Everything's being recorded. Vin's laugh was genuinely amused. Now the question is, how much of your career are you willing to sacrifice to protect someone who used you as a weapon? Jimmy looked at the scattered papers on his desk, then at the documents on the screen, then at Vin. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. You didn't know because you didn't want to know, Vin said, his voice losing all trace of humor. You wanted a story that would generate buzz, get people talking, boost your ratings. You didn't care if it was true. That's not fair. Fair? Vince stood up again, and this time his presence seemed to fill the entire studio. You want to talk about fair, Jimmy? Let's talk about the 20 crew members whose reputations you were willing to destroy with those fake complaints. Let's talk about Tyrese, whose name you dragged through the mud based on lies. Marcus's voice cut through the tension. Jimmy, we're going to need you to make a public retraction tonight on the show. I'm not retracting anything until I verify. You're not in a position to negotiate, Vin interrupted. You see, Jimmy, while you were busy trying to ambush me, I was busy building a case that shows a pattern of reckless journalism, character assassination, and collaboration with known criminals. Criminals. Rebecca Martinez isn't just an embezzler, Jimmy. She's also been blackmailing studio executives for the past year, and now you're part of her conspiracy. The studio was so quiet you could hear the air conditioning humming. Jimmy looked around desperately, but his producers were all staring at him with expressions ranging from shock to disgust. What do you want from me? Jimmy asked quietly. I want you to tell the truth, Vin said simply. I want you to admit to your audience that you were manipulated. I want you to retract every false accusation you made tonight. And I want you to apologize. Jimmy was quiet for a long moment, staring at his hands. When he finally looked up, his eyes were filled with something that might have been tears. I'm sorry, he said to Vin. Don't apologize to me, Vin replied. Apologize to them, he gestured to the audience. Apologize to the people who trusted you to tell them the truth. Jimmy turned to face the audience, his voice barely above a whisper. I owe all of you an apology. I let my desire for a sensational story cloud my judgment. I didn't properly verify my sources, and I allowed myself to be used as a weapon against an innocent man. Louder, Vin said. Jimmy's voice grew stronger. Vin Diesel is not the man I portrayed him as tonight. The accusations I made were based on fabricated evidence provided by someone with a personal vendetta. I was wrong and I'm sorry, Vin nodded approvingly. Good. Now there's one more thing. What? You're going to donate your salary from tonight's show to a charity that supports crew members who've been blacklisted from Hollywood for speaking out against abuse? Jimmy nodded weakly. Okay. And Jimmy, Vin's voice was almost gentle now. Next time someone offers you information that seems too good to be true, maybe you should remember this moment. Vin picked up his phone and ended the call with Marcus. Then he looked directly into the main camera. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been an education for all of us tonight. Remember, the truth isn't always as exciting as the lie, but it's always more important. He turned back to Jimmy one last time. I think my work here is done. As Vin walked toward the stage exit, Jimmy called out desperately, "Vin, wait. How did you know? How did you know about Rebecca? About the setup?" Vin paused at the edge of the stage and turned back with that trademark smile. "Jimmy, I've been in this business for 30 years. You learn to spot the snakes before they bite you." And with that, he walked off the stage, leaving Jimmy Kimmel sitting alone at his desk, surrounded by the scattered remains of his credibility. The audience sat in stunned silence until someone in the back started clapping. Slowly, others joined in until the entire studio was applauding, not for Jimmy, but for the man who had just taught them all a lesson about truth, integrity, and the power of being prepared. So there you have it. The night Vin Diesel didn't just survive an ambush interview, he turned it into a masterclass in exposing media manipulation. What did you think of how Vin handled Jimmy's attack? Was he too harsh, or did Jimmy get exactly what he deserved? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that prove Hollywood is stranger than any fiction we could imagine.